Good evening, everybody. Welcome to, Monday night Squawk Talk. Minus the squawk, however, as Steve's down in London covering some important court cases, which you'll hear more about as he reports on them over the coming days, no doubt. So I'll try and do him proud and try not to break StreamYard in his absence. Tonight, Socialist Telly is welcoming back the Liverpool Community Independence Group, consisting of Alan Gibbon, Alfie Hinks, and Laura Wharton. Welcome one and all. How are we?
Good. Sound.
Good. Thanks, Damien. Yeah, everyone's good in Liverpool. I think over what we discussed as the coming minutes go on now, or the debacle that's gone on. There seems to be a debacle every week that's unfolding in this city council, so it's all exciting stuff.
Excellent stuff. Well, now there's been some. I wrote this down. I said, a heated debate, and then I realised that's an awful pun, really, over the matter of Liverpool Council's energy bill. We're all seeing our bills rise right now. People are struggling all over the place to pay them, but you've just had a letter through the door saying your energy bill's rising by some £16 million. How on earth have you got a bill that size?
Well, do you want me to start off? Basically, the City Council had to sort out a contract for the year with Scottish Power, its provider. They didn't, for a whole series, a catalogue of errors amongst council officers, with allegedly the chief executive, senior officers not knowing, cabinet members not knowing. There's been a whole series of dates swirling about when these miscommunications occurred. But the upshot is that instead of a fixed rate at around 10 million, the City Council will now have to pay a bill of 26 million, which means 16 million pounds extra. Now that breaks down that something like £4.5 million will be, to do with budget. 3.9 million would be a cost to school budgets, and then there's the fire and rescue bill. So this is a bill for the whole of the city and for every school. And schools would be expected to find the money out of their delegated budgets. They're already facing a huge crisis. For example, I'm governor of a school where the monthly bill, instead of being £1,300, you're talking about £6,000. And this is when there was a holiday in the middle of it. So I was on with the finance cabinet member and Deputy Mayor Jane Corbett on Radio Merseyside. And in her section of the interview, she said that this shortfall, this catastrophe, would be drawn from the reserves. Now, there's an irony there, of course, because when we were in the middle of the budget debate and crisis, one of the things we were asking is why reserves had gone up from, by £10 million. Why couldn't that be spent preventing adult social care cuts? And at that time, we would have cabinet members kind of looking at us with a kind of pitying expression and saying it wasn't robust enough to do that. And we needed the security of these reserves. All of a sudden, you are now depending on the reserves, not for a rainy day, but for a self-inflicted monsoon. And that is the situation we're in.
Yeah. I mean, sorry to interrupt. Carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt for you.
I was just going to say, I see people having a lot of difficulty with Wi-Fi. Alfie's dropped out. But so basically, it's a horrific situation now. We've already been campaigning for Laura, who hopefully will be able to make it onto the call in a minute. We're going to stand in the Fazakerley by-election, which will be coming up in the next, say, 6 weeks, something like that. And I've been informing people, and so have other members who've been, knocking on doors and delivering leaflets. What shocks me is so many people nowadays do not follow the news, don't read the local newspapers, have not been listening to Radio Merseyside or watching the Northwest, and it's come as a real shock to so many people on the doorstep that there is this financial catastrophe. And the first thing that people say to you is, oh, it's Tory cuts again. And you have to inform them, no, this is a self-inflicted series of errors. Now, of course, the question we're asking then is, how did these errors come about? Because I mean, where are the checks and balances to
Yeah,
have?
that's actually what I was just going to come and ask. I mean, where are the checks and balances? I thought every decision that councils make, they are, you have scrutiny committees to scrutinise. I mean, that's what they're there to do. How has this happened?
Well, I mean, this is what we're going to be asking. There's an emergency finance select committee on Wednesday, and this is our chance to scrutinise the decision. But I mean, the information that's been coming out, for example, is that there was an urgent meeting on March the 4th. That's 2 days after the budget was resolved. What we want to know there is, was the knowledge before the budget came out? In that case, was the budget itself safe and secure? And then it turns out it was the commissioners who revealed to the council leadership, to the mayor and the cabinet, that there was this ticking time bomb. One of the things that we've been told in the press is that a single officer failed to communicate to senior officers and was on holiday. Now, again, how can it be down to a single officer for an amount of money so vital and so big? So I mean, there are so many questions in this. And Barry Kushner, the chair of the Finance Select Committee, has called this in to have an emergency meeting on it.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, a £4 million shortfall in council budgeting is the result of this error. However it's happened, whoever's to blame. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of finger pointing going on. And those precious reserves, of course, which were a massive bone of contention for you guys. It's the main reason why you guys have walked away from the Labour Party over this and formed your own grouping, actually. But that's now, as you say, that's got to be dipped into now in order to make this up. So are the people of Liverpool going to be looking at more cuts as a result of this? What's going to be the consequences of having to do this?
Well, this is the next thing that we need to know. And I can't see any way that there will not be cuts out of this. That £4.5 million looks like it will be passed on to the next budget. That you raid reserves means that the cushion is reduced. And we were told, like say in last year's process, that you needed a large cushion. Well, it's a bit ironic that now, because of faults that are completely down to the cabinet and to senior officers, that cushion is going to be punctured and reduced, and its resilience gone.
Yeah. Alfie, Laura, welcome back.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
No, don't apologise. These things happen. We're more than familiar with Wi-Fi dropping out on this programme.
Can I just pick up on what Alan's raised there? I mean, the irony of all this is we left the Labour Party and we were quite honourable, and we had our reasons why we left the Labour Party. We were never going to vote for a £24 million cuts in the vital services that we've seen. We certainly weren't going to stand by and watch £11.7 million be cut from the adult social care, the most vulnerable in our city. And they're the people that are going to be affected by this £24 million cut. But to argue that why we left the Labour Party and the reasons we did is the £10 million that they put into the reserves to calculate a combined savings, or their savings for a rainy day, of £30 million. So there's £30 million into that reserves, and we condemn them for that. And we absolutely told them unequivocally that you're putting money into a savings account when the people of the city need it most. We are the most deprived city in the country, and they're putting money away. And the irony of it is that on Friday, when Alan was on the Radio Merseyside and the Deputy Mayor, Jane Corbett, came on after, and she admitted that we've made a mistake, but hey, let's move on. Let's be strong from this mistake. I didn't hear them saying that over the debacles that went on with the arrests and everything else that went with it prior to the city. So the city is now being dragged through the mud. But the most ironic thing about it is she announced on that radio show, well, where are you going to get the money from? Where's this hole that you've created? Well, we're going to go into the reserves and we're going to cover it in reserves. So they're going to cover the money that they were initially denied. The people of the city were denied the money, the vital services that they wouldn't put that money in. And now they're putting the money back into them from the reserves on their massive mistake. So they're quite happy to raid the coffers of the reserves to cover their mistake. But they're not happy to raid the coffers to protect the vital services that we need in this city. And that's what's ironic about it.
Yeah, it just made me, actually, you bringing that up, it's just made me wonder, actually, did they, I had to call me a conspiracy theorist, maybe, I don't know. Maybe my disdain and distrust of politicians is just that deep now. But they wanted these massive reserves. They're now having to eat up half of them due to this mistake. Is there any chance they could have known about this before they decided they needed all these reserves?
Well, I said to Alan while we were leafleting last week, how foresight that the leadership has when they knew they were going to make a mistake and they knew they were going to put that £10 million away for our mistakes. So it's ironic that, did they know that they were going to mess up? Did they know that they were going to fail the people of the city? The answer to that is yes, and let's save up for it, because that's how incompetent we are.
There is another element to this, of course, is that this mistake, I hate using that word because it's one heck of a mistake, but this catalogue of errors has occurred under the aegis, under the watch of the commissioners. They've been in for a year. Just about the only concrete thing we'd seen was them giving themselves a 50% backdated pay rise. And now, we have, I can't think in local government of a loss on this scale. One won't come to mind at the moment. This is big. And it's occurred while we're supposed to be on an improvement journey. That's the sort of terminology. And that we've got government-appointed commissioners who have been in for a year. If you've got that level of scrutiny and policing, it seems astonishing that something like this can go through.
Yeah, commissioners, 50% pay rise. That was forced on them, I understand. That's an interesting way of getting people to take a pay rise. But we'll digress just briefly a moment since you brought that up, because there's a 1.75% pay rise that you are being offered, but you don't plan on taking it, do you?
No, we don't have whipping as a group, but I know myself and Alfie have got the same view, and others in the group have, and that is that it's inappropriate given a crisis on this scale and the cost of living crisis of the citizens and residents that we represent, for us to take any pay rise. So if it is voted through, and I'll vote against it, Alfie will vote against it, some others will, maybe all of us will, I don't know, we haven't had the full conversation, but if it goes through, we'll be donating ours to some community cause like a food bank or whatever else is in the community at the time that seems pressing. It doesn't seem appropriate to take that, really doesn't.
Have any of the other parties or groupings on the council taken the same stance you have over that?
Well, sorry. You go on. Well, I was just going to say, I don't know of any vote against it at the committee where it went through. So I don't think anybody else at the moment has taken this stance. But I don't want to speak for them. We'll find out at full council when there's a vote. Yeah. Ronna has just said she'll vote the same way as us.
Yeah. And basically, I think most of us won't be taking that stance. I think it's obscene that you've got a mayor on £84,000 a year. They've just made £24 million They've just made the biggest calamity I've been I've been involved in local politics for many years. I haven't witnessed such a massive calamity of maladministration, you might as well call it, with a £16 million. They didn't renew a Lecky contract on the day that they did, and it cost £16 million extra. That is disgusting on the most deprived city in the country and the people that are leading it. So it's, for us, I mean, I'm voting. I don't want the pay rise. I do not want the pay rise. I think it's obscene. I think it's inappropriate in this climate, in this time, to actually get all these mistakes that they've made and make us vote for a pay rise. I mean, come on. We just, it's just obscene. And for every single day that goes past in this city, something pops up that's inappropriate by this leadership. It really is. I've just seen a Twitter by the mayor today. She tweeted, and I'll repeat this. She tweeted that this is a mayor on £84,000 a year, proudly tweeting that she's just received a £150 rebate by Liverpool City Council towards energy costs. That is obscene. It's disgusting, right? And it's absolutely inappropriate that someone in that position, on that amount of money, can accept another £150 when people in this city need that most.
Yeah, I think Rona Heron has just summed that up. Indeed, it is absolutely disgraceful. It's just the biggest load of hooey you've ever heard of, isn't it? Really, I mean, talk about rubbing people's faces in it. I just wanted to bring up this comment again by Ellie Green. Is this huge story getting? And it is a huge story getting publicity. I know you talked about this a moment ago, Alan, possibly before Ellie came on, but it's worth repeating it again. You know, people are not you're talking to are surprised this is happening. They're not realizing that this has actually happened. It's a massive scandal. This is £16 million down the tubes. How? And people don't know about it. I mean, how are we going to get the word out?
I've got to give credit. I mean, Liam Thorpe, who's the political journalist at the Liverpool Echo, has charted this exhaustively, and he uncovered the story. So it's been there in the Liverpool Echo, I think, and Radio Merseyside covered it, and myself and Jane Corbett were both interviewed. I think Richard Kemp, the Lib Dem leader, has been interviewed and has been on the news. It's not caught the national press, which seems strange when usually you have the likes of the Daily Mail sitting like vultures to pick up anything from a local Labour authority. I suspect it will. I think it's just a matter of time before it does percolate through, and then I think there'll be uproar. Sometimes it takes time for a story to accumulate. Maybe, I don't know, it's not sexy enough, a story about an electricity bill, but once it sinks in, £16 million. I mean, that is, compared to the shortfall in the budget, I mean, it's over half of the shortfall in last year's budget, to put it into perspective. So I suspect this will become a very big story. At the moment, it seems to be a slow burn. But, I mean, one of the other things that could trigger it is what are the commissioners going to do, and what's national government going to do? Because I wouldn't be at all surprised if they didn't exert some other form of direct control.
Yeah, I mean, the commissioners, for what they're getting paid, they ought to be doing their job on this, really. As for why it's not being picked up in the national press, I suppose they're still too busy taking lumps out of Starmer for his beers and his curries at the minute. They'll get round to electric bills. But actually, it should be. It should be, because everybody around the country can relate to this. Everybody's electric bills have gone up. For a council, a massive council like Liverpool City Council, to have this £16 million hole over their energy bills, this is absolutely nuts. And I know one of the areas particularly affected in this is schools and the fire service. How are they implicated in particular, and how badly is this going to affect them?
Are you saying schools?
Schools and the fire. I'm obviously having a look through the Liverpool Echo myself. I'll have a read of it if nobody else is. But
Yeah,
schools and fire service, I read, are the main areas implicated in this. So how is they particularly affected?
If I just deal with schools, some schools in Liverpool have at the moment got sufficient reserves to cope, though they shouldn't be spending their reserves on this. Some have got budgets that are actually very thin and near to the bone and could tip them over into deficit, and some have got considerable deficit. So it depends how robust the finances of the particular schools are. But yes, if they are forced to pick up the tab, it'll be catastrophic. That must not happen. It has got to be covered out of reserves. Much as I dislike that, schools should not take any hit. Now, Jane said it will come out of reserves. She said that directly. But the letter that has gone out from education to head teachers doesn't seem as crystal clear as Jane's statement. So that's another of the things we'll be asking at Wednesday's select committee. We need to know that school budgets will not be affected one iota by this this catastrophe that is not their responsibility. We have to have that reassurance. It's got to be in writing and it's got to go to heads.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned what's she called, Jane Corbett again, is it? She's been on the radio with yourself, Alan, the other day, and did she issue an apology when she owned up to her part in this? I suppose.
Can't remember.
Has anybody shown any contrition or taken responsibility yet?
The chief executive has apologised, and there is going to be an inquiry. But I don't think that's enough. I mean, our group leader, Anna Rothery, and we agree with her, said that Jane and the chief executive should consider their positions. So that's the official position of our group. So I'll hand over to Alfie.
I think some of the head teachers are quite concerned over job losses, and I remember going into the full council when the budget was getting delivered, and we were sort of told by the trade unions that if we're voting against this budget, you could be potentially losing job losses, which is a nonsense. That's never going to happen. But the calamity that Jane's done will cause possible job losses. How many teachers, how many teaching assistants are going to suffer from this? She's committed, as Alan said on the radio, she's committed that they should take the hit on this, and no school should be given that burden. And we're going to hold her to that. And as Alan said, we'll be going into that select committee on Thursday. Thursday, Alan? Wednesday. Okay. We'll be going into that select committee on Wednesday, and we'll be telling them straight that it's your calamity, Jane, and it's down to you. As it's going to have to come out of the reserves, because where else is it going to come for? Because we don't want it coming out of the schools, and certainly not taking a hit on the fire service, the most needed service in our communities, and we can't afford to be having hits on any of these vital frontline services. It's just not acceptable. And I can't emphasize enough how incompetent this leadership is. I've never experienced such incompetence in all my political time as being in local politics. I've never ever. You can slate the Lib Dems of they were voted the worst council in Britain when they run Liverpool. And I'm telling you, did we come across worse than this, Alan? I'd have to think about it, mate.
Comparable, maybe, at the moment.
I'd have to think about it.
These are people who were colleagues till very recently, and people we quite like. We don't want to just... you play the ball, not the person. But, somebody has got to take responsibility, put their chin out for this, because it really is a huge scandal.
Yeah. Should there be resignations, do you think? Are you going to be going there asking for them?
Definitely. There should be someone should resign over this. Maybe the chief executive. He runs the city. He runs the city because no one else is running it. Because we can't see any clear leadership. There's no leadership in this leadership. There is no leadership whatsoever. Every time we turn, it's the deputy mayor. Every time we turn, it's the chief executive. Where's the mayor? Where's the mayor? She made a statement on the day. I wasn't told about it. Well, if you weren't told about it, what are you leading? You're leading a city that you should know everything about what's going on. And for this is just unacceptable.
Yeah,
And
surely the bus stops with her. Sorry,
just
Alan.
to pick up a comment that came in. I didn't catch the guy's name, but he said any independent accountant would have picked this up, Roland Laycock. And that's absolutely true. They have now brought in independent accountants. And I mean, this will cost another bundle of money. But I mean, why wasn't this accounted for, audited, reviewed, and scrutinised as part of the ongoing process of any large organisation dealing with multi-million-pound budgets? I mean, this is what I find myself scratching my head at. I'm not a financial expert, but I expect financial expertise to be built into the core activity of an organisation like Liverpool City Council. And I'm just bewildered how this has happened.
Can I just point out as well, Damien, that it was actually, and this is more embarrassing, it gets better, it's actually the commissioners that made it aware to the chief executive and to the leader and to everybody else that, do you know your lechies, do you know you haven't renewed your lechi? They're the commissioners that are telling our leadership, you haven't done that. What's going on?
I mean, it's an electric bill, for heaven's sake. I mean, surely it's one of the most basic, fundamental things as an administration of a city council. You know you've got to pay. I mean, how on earth has this been such a massive stuff up? I think Rowan has just given a monkey face. I think that's pretty much sums it up. Monkeys.
Which brings us on to the forthcoming by-election and our candidate, Laura.
Yes. Let's move on to a more positive note, especially since she's managed to get back in and her Wi-Fi is working. Welcome, Laura. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm fine, thank you.
How are you? Well, you know, with everybody that seems to be, I say running the show, they're not really, but Liverpool clearly needs some councillors of competence, and that might be something they might be getting one more of in the near future in Fazakerley, in the form of Laura Wharton, who's joining us here tonight. What is happening in Fazakerley? I mean, people might think, well, we're sick and tired of elections at this moment in time. You didn't actually have local elections in Liverpool this time around, did you? So
No.
who are you, Laura? And why should people vote for you? And what exactly is happening in Fazakerley? How come there's a vacancy?
I don't think that there is at the moment, is there? But there will be coming up when it's called. Basically, I'm just the same as everyone else. I'm a lone parent who works, and everything what's happening at the moment affects me as it affects residents of Fazakerley. And to be honest with you, why are people voting to put them in more destitute? Why are people making them vote and them calls? It's just they haven't got the right people supporting them at the moment.
No, I mean, we've been talking electric, we've been talking schools potentially facing a financial hit. These are things that affect you directly as a single parent, working as well, just trying to make ends meet, like we all are. You must be absolutely disgusted with what's been going on the council as well.
I'm absolutely disgusted. They've just put children in Liverpool in more poverty than they already are, and that doesn't sit well with me at all. Basically, we need. Can I just commend the other people who have stepped down from Labour, not because of anything else, but because they've stood the ground and done what was right, basically. And this is what we need in Liverpool, because Liverpool don't follow suit. The real socialists have done what they've had to do to... How can you put it? It's hard, isn't it? We don't just sit down and take it. So that's what they're doing. They're fighting back, and I'm happy that they're supporting me.
Yeah, I think we need more and more people who are prepared to say enough's enough, and we need to stand up. We need to challenge this and put up with it. And if I was to put money on any part of the country kicking off first and saying no, enough's enough, I would suggest Merseyside is probably a likely bet for where that's going to start. I know you guys have been out campaigning in Fazakerley. Sorry, Laura, go on.
Fazakerley have got some amazing people who want to improve the area to make it a better place. There's so many people who are passionate about it. So I want to work with them and listen to what they have to say and what their needs are. Because they know best, they live in the area. So it's about going down, finding me roots, and like I have been, it's a lovely area, so Andy want to keep it the way it is.
Yeah.
Run by proper people.
Better people like sorry, Alfie, go on.
Just going on what Laura said, we are proud people. We come from the same communities. Laura lives in Clubmore, which is just across the East Lancashire road, crossing the road into Fazakerley. And we're really proud to have Laura as our candidate. I think she's perfect for the position. She's perfect for what we stand for. And I'm sure we're going to take the fight to Labour. I mean, I've got to say this, is that over the last, I'd say 15 to 20 years, this ward has been neglected every single year. I've got to take my hat off and say there's probably only been one councillor that I could put my finger on and say, do you know what? That man done a good job there. And that was Jack Spriggs. He was a trade unionist. He lived in Fazakerley. He represented Fazakerley. And I've got nothing bad to say about that man. That man represented this ward 20 odd years ago. Since then, this ward has been forgotten. There's nothing since the Liberal Democrats came in 2002, Alan, was it? 1998, they took control, and over them 10 years, was it, that they were in? They took a sports centre that was for the residents of Fazakerley, and they took that and gave it to a private school, to the school, and closed the gates on a sports centre. The very vital services that the people of Fazakerley need. This ward is on the peripheries of the city, so it's at the end of the city, and it's forgotten. It's a forgotten ward. It always gets forgot about. And if we don't have decent councillors to stand up and represent them, it will continue to be forgotten about. Now, the Liberal Democrats took the sports centre away, and the Labour Party took the swimming pool away. And for 12 to 13 years, that swimming pool has laid empty. My business is we do maritime training, and we train people. Our establishment here has trained people for over 12 years now, and put over 4,000 people into employment on ships. Now, that's not a bad figure for a small company in a city that's trying to do its best and trying to give opportunities to people. I'm proud to live in Fazakerley, and I'm proud to have my business in Fazakerley. And we took that pool over 2.5 years ago, and now it is fully functional. It is functional for our needs as a business, and it is functional for our needs as a community. The community get involved now. So our slogan is, the Liberals took the sports centre away, Labour Party took the pool away, and Independents brought it back. And that's what we can do as an independent. We can achieve a lot more than what any of these mainstream parties can ever achieve. And why? Because we're free to do it. We're free to say what we want. We're free to spread our conscience and do and vote what we want. And that's the beauty about it. And that's why I'm so proud that we've got people like Laura that will be standing in Fazakerley. She's a grassroots campaigner. She's been in the community in Clubmore for some years, and she's just perfect for the position.
Yeah,
before you bring Anna in, because I've seen Anna's just come on the call, I'd like to pay tribute as well to people like Jean Martin, who worked for years, right through the pandemic, getting food parcels out to the community. She's done a statement in support of Laura as a grassroots activist. And Ronna, who's one of our councillors, has been involved in keeping the library going. But that is not secure. They've got to bid every year to keep going, wherein they should actually have been given a long-term reassurance of their existence. And that was not forthcoming in the last budget. Oh, I see Ron's in. So I'll hand over to Ronna and Anna for their contributions.
Hi,
Yeah,
everyone.
welcome to Rona Heron and Anna Rothery. Thank you very much for joining the show. Wonderful to see you. Rona, I know you were quite actively commenting there just a moment ago. Wonderful that you decided to pop in and join us now.
I just, when I saw Anna, I thought it was too late for me to pop in earlier, but I saw
never
Anna
too
and I
late.
thought, let's go for it.
No.
I just want to add to this, Dame, what we were talking about with for Laura. I'm just, I haven't met Laura yet, and I'm just over the moon that she's agreed to come on board, because she's someone that you need to. I remember I followed her last campaign at Club Moor, and she's very feisty. She's a natural leader, and she's got all the good reasons and the passion. What you need in that seat. You won't know this, but I'm typing away actively there, because Versailles is very close to my heart anyway, because the last 7 years, up until just prior to Christmas, I ran the community library, what the council were pulling out of. So they put them up for people to bid and throw in a business plan and take over as community leader. And I've done it with some guts as well, because I absolutely, I don't normally talk like this about myself, but I'm hoping that particularly Alan and Alfie will agree, because we've been there. But I changed it into something that is now a vital lifeline. It's a community hub. It has a timetable of activity. It does job search. There's a food bank. There's book clubs. There's stuff for children, stuff for the elders. It's just all inclusive, totally like a community hub that if it wasn't there, it would massively impact on the mental health and well-being of local tenants. And now, strangely enough, we're for social housing, where it's now become like a stakeholder of mine that I sort of oversee, funny enough, but I'm really passionate about it. And we've talked about this in the group, because we're worried this year. I was still banging on about libraries, and they were saying the safe should have gone years ago. You only had funding for 2 years. You're supposed to have made yourself self-sustainable. Yeah, we did. I wrote bids all the time, but necessarily those bids are ring fence for people's jobs and for projects. It's a non-for-profit. You don't make profits out of it. You're just keeping it running. And we think that next year will come, and Alan will back me up on this, because he was part of the original campaign against the libraries closing. That's when I first met Alan about 7 years ago. And they will say next year you need to go and get your own funding. We're not giving it to you yet. We think that's going to be on the board, don't we, Alan? And I just know that community will just die. And in my opinion, and I don't know whether I'm in the right to say this, but so me knowing them councillors for all them years, am I supposed to say it anyway? There was never a massive, they don't engage, they didn't come along. One in particular might have sometimes, and supported when we were having events and open days. In terms of the library belonged to Versailles Community Federation, and they would go and fund a food bank in another ward in Walton Vale, but have never funded anything towards the Versailles Community Hub, which has got over 400 local members and is there every Tuesday morning, and is chock-a-block, the food bank and the food pantry. And I just don't get that. You know, and I've recently, as part of my role and my job, I've wrote to them asking, can we come and will it become part of my action, my crisis plan for the rest of the year in terms of debt and fuel and food and stuff. So I'm just waiting to hear back from that. So it's really important for Versailles is, we always said when we worked there, we've got Knowsley 2 minutes away and we've got Sefton 2 minutes away. It's literally on the end of the earth. It'll fall off if no one protects it and no one's working there. And the lovely, lovely people. We've got so many friends there. The good families, they really are. They deserve the best. They do.
I think the one thing that comes across here, listening to all of you speak, is the fact that you genuinely care. There's passion in your voices. And the thing is, so many of these politicians, they belong to these parties and they just come into it because they want a nice career in politics. And it's There's a comment that came in earlier on that I just thought was relevant, that was worth bringing back up actually at this point. From Jonathan Cooper, he said, "You've got huge potential if the triumph of Aspire is anything to go by." And of course, you've mentioned the fact that you haven't got this whipping situation. You haven't got to follow certain sets of rules, certain instruction anymore. You can be your own people, do your own thing, serve the people of Liverpool as they deserve to be properly, and not let down as they have obviously have been. If this £16 million balls up is anything to go by, do you? I mean, obviously, you must have seen that it was one of the big stories of the local elections last week. Was Aspire in Tower Hamlets routing Labour, frankly. Do you think you've got the same potential yourselves, as Jonathan's asked?
Yeah, definitely. Hello, Damo. Sorry,
Hi,
I'm
Anna.
I was in a meeting, so sorry I'm a bit late. But yeah, I mean, I think Tower Hamlets has just shown that nationally people are looking for an alternative. You know, let's be completely honest about this. People are sick to the back teeth in terms of, you know, the infighting, the petty politics that are going on. You know, these career politicians who just want to walk around with a briefcase saying, "Look at me, I'm a politician," but they don't actually do anything in communities. You know, it's time for change. It really is. And, you know, those who dither and wait around, you know, they're going to be lost. You know, the reality is, you know, we've got Laura, we've got Ronna, we've got the members in our group. We are made up of like-minded people. We've all got community out of our hearts. We're passionate about our communities. You know, we'll fight to the last breath to make sure that we do the right thing by our communities. This is what people want to see. They've had enough of people who proclaim to have communities at the heart of everything they do, but their actions show something completely different. And so, you know, yes, we definitely have got the timing right in terms of going independent. You know, as you know, Damo, I went independent quite some time back because I no longer think we share the same philosophy with the Labour Party. Certainly haven't got the same aims and ambitions as the Labour Party. I feel as though the Labour Party has literally left our communities to rot on the vine. You know, they've done nothing in terms of protecting communities. They've done nothing in terms of poverty, nothing in terms of the energy and the cost of living crisis and the 0-hour contracts, and now the fire and rehire. You know, at a time when we should have been standing up against the erosion of employment rights, we've allowed everything to pass us by. Nothing's been challenged. I don't think any of us felt really hand on heart we could stay with the Labour Party any longer and hold our heads up high in our communities. We just couldn't do it. And so, you know, the time is now for us to show that there's an alternative way of looking after communities, being at the forefront, challenging, scrutinising the issues, making sure that we get to the root of the major issues, like the electricity bill that we've just inherited through sheer incompetence. You know, we're not going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to make sure that we bring things to the forefront. We're going to make sure that we tell it like it is. We're going to make sure that we scrutinise. And we're also going to make sure that if commissioners come to this city and proclaim that they're here to run a best value exercise and wants an obscene amount of money to do that, that when they're not aware of what's going on in terms of electricity bills, they're out to account. And not only them, but the chief exec, Jane Corbett, the deputy mayor, and also the mayor, because the buck stops with the mayor. The mayor's got the, you know, the power to ensure that things are run right. And if you don't know what's going on your watch, you shouldn't be in a position.
Yeah, if I could just come in on something somebody said on the chat, which backs up what Anna said. Somebody said, have we heard about the Preston model? Well, yeah, of course we have.
Yeah.
And up the road in Salford, in North Ayrshire, there are examples of the kind of, you know, community work, community investment that we should be pushing. And we tried to raise that in the last budget and were stonewalled. And there was this patronising attitude all the way through that you had to do this kind of conventional monetarist approach to cuts. Well, this has just blown up in their faces with the energy bill. I think Liverpool City Council should show a level of humility to take on board the kind of ideas that Anna's just been talking about, so that we do present a real alternative, proper socialist alternative from the community upwards, that actually means the people of Liverpool can be proud of the municipal leaders, not shaking their heads at another catastrophe.
Yeah.
Can I just pick up on that, Damien?
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, when I was elected last year, I think we were having caucuses in Walton, not private caucuses, but the discussion was taking place, is what Ellie just said there, and what Alan's just picked up on about the Preston model. And also, I mean, obviously, I think that for Liverpool, I think it's the only way forward now. I think with the mismanagement, as Anna said, of the finances and the £16 million, that's put the icing on the cake for how we gonna fight back, and how are we gonna return and give a transformative outlook to the people of Liverpool. And I think one of the things, and I'll be pushing this over the next 12 months, I think going into the all-out elections next year. And I think one of our manifestos should be what I'm saying, and it's my opinion, is that we should be adopting a manifesto of alternative, and of adopting what the Preston's done and what Cleveland has done, the Cleveland model, which, you know, in a country that's the size, well, the country of America, and a city or a town can adopt social welfare into this Cleveland model is fantastic. And, you know, I think we need to be looking at that as a group, and I think we need to be having them discussions very soon about moving forward and pushing that into councillors' policy, because it's been proved in Preston, it's been proved in Ayrshire, it's been proved in the United States, and it can be proved in Liverpool. And it's one of the most demanding cities now that need that type of investment and politics now.
Yeah, well, you've got three of your colleagues here. Would all three associate themselves with those that manifesto proposal?
We need the detail, but yeah, I mean, we need creativity. I mean,
Good idea of it.
Yeah, I think we need to listen. We need to be having seminars where we hear people who've got real suggestions that can be taken on board. Like, say, what was missing last year in a very opaque process was any sense that the senior officers and the cabinet wanted to take on board ideas that were put forward in a document. And I mean, I think if you refuse to look at concrete and creative suggestions from other people, that arrogance is going to come back and hit you in the face, and it has, in the form of this energy bill. You know, you can't say on the one hand, we reject everything that's not robust, and then not have robust, secure scrutiny provision yourself. Really, I mean, that looks really bad.
Yeah. It's yeah, absolutely. There's a comment that came in.
Can I just come back in, Damo, about
sure.
the Commissioner's position in this whole fiasco? Because the reality is that, you know, their checks and balances, the risk assessment that they should have been doing as part of the best value performance, which is what they've been brought in to do, and which they're being paid handsomely for. You know, why they didn't pick this up, that would have been one of the first things that you would have done, is done an audit of everything that was coming to fruition in terms of contracts within Liverpool City Council, and you would have started putting, you know, some issues and some provisions in place in terms of making sure that we got best value, because it all sits under best value. It might be £16 million electricity bill, but still best value. And so for me, you know, I've put in, you know, I put a motion forward to Liverpool City Council, just asking about what the role of the commissioners actually is and who they're answerable to. And in terms of how do they feed back to elected members? I mean, our group don't know, we don't have a clue about what their remit is and what they're doing. Their remit seems to get bigger and bigger every time you look at it. But in terms of the rest of the elected members in the city, they're also not, they don't have any scrutiny, they don't have any feedback from the commissioners. And when I put the motion forward, they referred it to a select committee and said to me that, well, actually, we don't have any jurisdiction over these commissioners. You know, Whitehall has all the jurisdiction over the commissioners, and they're only answerable to them. How can you have people coming into the city with a specified remit being paid an obscene amount of money? And I spoke to you last time, I still believe it was a breach of contract in terms of the money that they agreed to do the job for, and then they got the 50% increase. But how can you have these people coming into the city and overlooking something as important as something like £60 million worth of debt that we're going to inherit because people were looking, stargazing and contemplating the navels when they should have been looking at where the risks were. This is a big issue, and we have to hold the commissioners to account, but we also have to hold the chief exec and the leadership to account also, because, they're condoning the behaviour of the commissioners. They're not challenging it. I mean, I firmly believe they've made enough mistakes whilst they've been in the city for our leadership to be challenging what they're actually doing. And for me, the 60 million, gap in terms of funding, that's going to have a huge impact on schools, on the fire station, the fire, FBU and stuff like that. Why are people still not asking questions about how this was overlooked?
Yeah.
This to me is like, it's almost as though we're paying obscene amounts of money for people who are completely incompetent. And unless they can convince me otherwise, then that's my stance. I do believe they're incompetent until they can prove to me or give me hard facts about how this was overlooked and why they missed it and why it wasn't brought to the attention of the mayor, the deputy mayor and the chief exec in a timely fashion.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, that has brought me back to a comment that came on just before you joined us, Anna, actually, and it was in relation to you. So I wonder what you make of this comment Ellie posted earlier on. Would this have happened, in fact, if Starmer hadn't bulldozed Anna Rothery out of the way? Obviously, you've got this rather large meeting happening on Wednesday to get to the bottom of this. But what would you have done differently?
Can I just say, Damo, it wouldn't have happened on my watch because I'd have been all over it. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have needed commissioners to tell me that there was a potential gap in terms of the electricity, £16 million. I would have known about that before. It might be a massive council, but it's like I'd run it the same way as I run my household, to a very, very stern budget, and I would know where every penny was going. And I expect any leadership in this council to know exactly the same thing. So no, it wouldn't have happened if Keir Starmer hadn't intervened and stopped me from being the elected mayor of the city. But I'll tell you what would have happened. Instead of putting a consultation out there, I would have gone to a referendum and let the people of this city have a democratic vote on the leadership taking us forward.
Yeah, I think it's very, very hard to dispute anything that you've just said there. Yeah, anybody else want to jump in on that point?
Just a quick point, and I'm sure if Anna had been elected mayor, we wouldn't have seen a £24 million cut in the vital assets. We wouldn't have seen £40 green waste bin charge, and we would have seen best value. We would have seen the alternative budget, the alternative paper that we proposed to this leadership. We were told, as Alan said, it's not robust enough. And we would have seen that. So it would have been a massively different council leadership had Anna been in as mayor.
And I think we should say we still have not had a transparent explanation of why Anna was removed. The other two were removed to get Anna out of the way as a left candidate. And we've got to say that bluntly. There was no fair process there. It was, a total stitch up, and it's an absolute scandal that happened.
I think we're underestimating the capabilities of people who've been watching this space for some time. I think everybody's clear on why I wasn't and why I was removed. Your worst nightmare for the Labour Party is having a socialist leader. Compound that by having a black socialist leader, and there's your answer.
Yeah, well, I think we've had
could have been the start of a fight back. That's the other thing. It's the movement, isn't it? It's how a spark can lead to a fire, and that's what they were terrified of. And instead, we've got a Labour leader who writes for the SUN, and that's something neither Anna nor any of us would ever countenance. We wouldn't wipe our BTMs on the thing, and it's scandalous that Starmer thinks that is Labour leadership.
Yeah, well, we've seen another example just the other day of Starmer making sure there's no socialists getting under his feet and getting in his way, because we've seen the same thing happen in Wakefield with parachuted candidates in there. He doesn't seem to be learning his lessons from this, does he?
Well, why would he? You know, Damo, he's been given carte blanche. I mean, he can literally do what he wants at the moment. You know, the saddest thing about it is that, you know, people are having to make the choices of leaving the Labour Party. And, you know, I'll stand by this. I said I didn't leave the Labour Party left me. And somebody wanted to correct me. They wanted to correct me on it. And I said, no, this is the reality. You know, I've been a Labour Party member since I was a teenager, you know, going on for, you know, 45 years, probably a bit longer. You know, I was there with the Mackenzie's friends when we were fighting against the poll tax. You know, all of those things like the dockers and the miners on the marches to London, the Shrewsbury too, and all of those things. You know, that's my values. My values haven't changed. Like everybody within our group, we still hold the same values. The only thing that's changed is the values of the Labour Party. And unfortunately, we're seeing people leaving the party in droves. But hopefully, you know, they're going to join groups like ours, independent groups that our primary concern is about our communities, the people that we represent, in a fight tooth and nail to make sure that we get a good deal in every area for our community members, whether they're elders, you know, whether they're working parents, whether they're people doing triple jobs, or whether they're unemployed with disabilities and from excluded communities. We will represent everybody fairly within our communities, and we'll fight tooth and nail to make sure that our people get everything that they deserve. And if Keir Starmer wants to continue down this road, it just tells me that he's got a time limit on his leadership, and he went into it knowing he had a time limit on his leadership, and he thinks he can go back to the bar and he can go back to, you know, being a barrister or a solicitor or Crown prosecution, and it won't touch him. But the one thing that I'll say about our group, and the one thing that will all clearly, you know, we confirm this in our actions and the way we speak, is that we want to be able to walk amongst our communities with our heads held high, regardless of whether we were able to go the distance or whether we're deselected. We'll be able to look back and say, at a time when the Labour Party was under attack internally from those on the right, we stood firm and we stood for our communities and we held our heads up high. And I think we'll be remembered for that.
Integrity, I think, is the word for that, Anna. You have it. Somebody else claims he's got it. I don't think he does. Just for giggles, really, since you brought up Starmer's time limit, this comment came through from Chris Crowder a minute ago.
Not a chance on this earth. Not a chance on this earth.
She said she wanted to get rid of thousands of socialists. I mean, come on. Can I just say one thing practically? If people do agree and live on Merseyside with everything that's been put forward tonight, we need your help, because, I mean, we can't whip a large group of councillors. We don't yet have a big membership behind us or anything. The only thing we've got from a fairly standing start is in Fazakerley, we need an army of volunteers. And that means if you consider yourself a rank and file grassroots socialist, come and help us to get Laura Wharton elected. And it'd be making history to go from a nearly 70% Labour vote share to a group of independent socialists winning for the community. That would be historic. Help us to make history. Help us to make history.
I think that's an excellent point to end the show on, because we are just about out of our time. Thank you very much once again, Liverpool Community Independent Group. It has been wonderful to have you on the show. You are, of course, welcome back anytime you like. Best of luck to poor Laura Wharton, whose Wi-Fi let her down this evening. Best of luck to her. And if you are wanting change in Liverpool, if you are associating yourself with all the comments that you've heard today from the independent group there, then help them out. Get out there in Fazakerley. Get out leafleting. Get out campaigning. Get Laura elected as number 9, it'll be, won't it, amongst your ranks? One more step towards becoming the official opposition.
It's time for change, and change starts in Fazakerley.
Hear, hear. Thanks very much, guys.
See ya.